week, family and friends of the late wrestling legend Hulk Hogan are gathering at a Largo church to...
The world lost a treasure today. Hulk Hogan was the greatest WWE superstar of all time.
People always wanted to paint us as enemies, but we were actually very close friends.
The news shocked the world. Hulk Hogan, gone. Within minutes, headlines flooded social media, and fans everywhere felt the ground shift beneath them. For millions, Hulk wasn't just another wrestler, he was the face of an entire era. The ripped shirts, the mustache, the say your prayers and take your vitamins. He wasn't just in the ring, he was in cartoons, movies, even breakfast cereal. But behind the flashing lights and the roars of the crowd, Hulk Hogan's story was never as simple as the red and yellow tights made it seem. There were scandals, betrayals, broken friendships, and moments that nearly erased his legacy forever. And yet, through all of it, one truth remains. Hulk Hogan changed wrestling and pop culture in ways that may never be repeated again. So how do we remember him? As the unstoppable hero of the 80s, the villain who shocked the world in the 90s, or the flawed man whose controversies almost destroyed him? Tonight, we're diving deep into the rise, the fall, and the legacy of Hulk Hogan. The man who defined an entire generation. The breaking news, when the first headline flashed across screens.
Straight to breaking news, and we're hearing just in the last few minutes that the professional wrestling and entertainment star Hulk Hogan has died in the US.
Hulk Hogan dead at 71, the internet froze. Fans rushed to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, desperate for answers. Some cried out in disbelief, "No way, not Hulk Hogan." Others whispered that they'd seen it coming, citing his health struggles and the toll of decades inside the ring. Within hours, hashtags like "RIP Hulk Hogan" and "Hulkamania Forever" began trending worldwide. Old clips of his WrestleMania moments were reshared millions of times. Fans posted pictures with him from autograph signings, writing heartfelt captions about how Hogan shaped their childhood. But almost as quickly as the news spread, the confusion began. Some outlets insisted it was true, others backtracked, saying reports were unconfirmed. And while the wrestling world held its breath, the story ignited a firestorm of speculation. For many, it didn't matter whether the news was real or not. Just hearing it forced fans to imagine a world without Hulk Hogan. And that thought alone was enough to shake people to their core. Because love him or hate him, Hogan wasn't just another wrestler. He was the man who transformed wrestling from smoky bingo halls into a global spectacle. Losing him would feel like losing a piece of pop culture itself. But as the chaos unfolded, one question kept echoing. How did we even get here? Why were so many people ready to believe Hogan's end had come? To understand why the internet spiraled when those headlines hit, you have to remember who Hulk Hogan really is. Hogan is the wrestler, the man who took professional wrestling out of dusty arenas and turned it into mainstream entertainment. In the 1980s, he wasn't just a sports figure, he was a global superstar, standing shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Michael Jordan and Sylvester Stallone. His iconic red and yellow gear, his booming catchphrase, "What ya gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" These weren't just gimmicks, they were cultural phenomena. Millions of kids begged their parents for Hulk Hogan action figures, bandanas, and lunch boxes. He was the face of WrestleMania, headlining some of the biggest matches in history and bringing the WWE to audiences it had never reached before. But Hogan wasn't only a wrestling figure. He crossed into Hollywood, starring in movies, TV shows, even Saturday morning cartoons. For many, he became larger than life. Not just an athlete, but an icon who symbolized strength, charisma, and the classic good guy hero of the 80s and 90s. And yet, that very fame also came with shadows. As much as fans worshipped him, critics whispered about controversies, scandals, and mistakes that followed him through the decades. But here's the thing, the shock wasn't just about losing a wrestler, it was about losing a cultural pillar, a symbol of an era that shaped millions of childhood. But the legend of Hulk Hogan didn't come without cracks, and that's where the story takes a darker turn. If Hulk Hogan was larger than life, then the stories surrounding him were just as big and often just as controversial. For decades, whispers followed Hogan everywhere he went. On one side, you had fans worshiping him like a hero. On the other, you had critics ready to tear down the image of the all-American good guy. There were the endless tabloid stories about his personal life, his relationships, his messy divorce, and the reality TV drama with his family. Every time Hogan's name popped up in the news, it wasn't just about wrestling anymore, it was about scandal. And then came the darker stories, the health scares. Hogan's body had been through absolute war. Years of wrestling, body slams, leg drops, and non-stop touring left him broken. He's had dozens of surgeries, including on his back, hips, and knees. At one point, Hogan admitted that doctors warned him he might never walk properly again. Add to that his struggles with painkillers and the constant rumors of declining health, and fans began to see him as someone who might not be around forever. That's why, when false reports of his death started surfacing, people believed them. The mix of Hogan's legendary status, his age, and his history of health battles made the stories sound just believable enough. But it wasn't just health fueling the rumors. Hogan's name had been tied to lawsuits, leaked recordings, and controversies that shook his career. At one point, the WWE even distanced itself from him, scrubbing his name from their Hall of Fame and pulling his merchandise. Fans were left wondering how much of Hogan's story was real, and how much was an illusion built by fame. And that's what made this latest viral news so powerful. People weren't just reacting to the possibility of Hogan being gone, they were reacting to the decades of stories, scandals, and struggles that already painted a picture of a man haunted by both triumph and tragedy. But here's the shocking twist. While the internet mourned, Hogan himself was about to flip the narrative completely. Hogan speaks out. Just when it felt like the internet had written Hulk Hogan's final chapter, the man himself came crashing back into the spotlight. And true to form, he didn't do it quietly. Instead of letting the rumors simmer, Hogan decided to flip the script. On social media, he posted photos of himself looking strong, alive, and very much not gone. He even joked about the situation, telling his fans, "Brother, I'm still here, don't count me out yet." That one line was enough to send shockwaves across the internet. In an instant, the death hoaxes turned into memes, and fans who were crying just hours before were now laughing in relief. Hogan's response was classic, part humor, part defiance, and pure entertainment. But his comeback wasn't just about proving he was alive. It was also about sending a message. Hogan reminded everyone that he's a fighter, not just in the ring but in life. He spoke about how he's been through battles most people couldn't imagine, not just body-slamming giants like Andre the Giant, but also fighting through surgeries, personal loss, and public humiliation. And yet here he was, still standing. What made his response even more powerful was how he tied it back to his fans. Hogan has always leaned on his Hulkamaniacs, the millions of supporters who grew up idolizing him. And in this moment, instead of feeding into negativity, he gave them hope. He reminded them of the same message he preached during his glory days. Never give up, keep fighting, and believe in yourself, brother. That hit home. Suddenly, what started as a rumor about death turned into a story about resilience. Fans from across the world flooded his comments with messages of support, posting throwback photos, old clips of his matches, and emotional tributes celebrating his legacy. And Hogan, he wasn't just surviving the scandal, he was thriving from it. He had once again taken control of the story, transforming a false report into a reminder of why he became a cultural icon in the first place. But here's the thing, Hogan's comeback message didn't just silence rumors, it also reopened old wounds. Because while fans were celebrating his survival, critics were quick to remind everyone of the darker chapters of his past. The backlash and the divide. For every fan who cheered at Hulk Hogan's triumphant "I'm still here, brother," there was another voice ready to remind the world of why Hogan remains one of the most controversial names in pop culture. Almost immediately after Hogan's post went viral, critics took to Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube comment sections to say don't forget what he's done. And that's where the divide became crystal clear. On one side were the die-hard Hulkamaniacs, people who grew up hanging posters of Hogan on their walls, eating their vitamins, saying their prayers, and believing in the larger-than-life hero. For them, Hogan's survival wasn't just news, it was personal. But on the other side, there was a chorus of critics who refused to let his past slide. They pointed to the scandals that nearly ended his career years ago, the leaked tapes, the lawsuits, the racial slurs that cost him his WWE legacy. To these people, Hogan's comeback wasn't inspiring. It was frustrating. They felt like the media and his fans were sweeping the ugly chapters of his story under the rug just because of nostalgia. This clash of perspectives created a wave of heated debates online. Some argued that people deserve second chances, and Hogan had already paid his price by losing endorsements, being erased from WWE history, and facing public humiliation. Others countered that forgiveness has limits, and Hogan had crossed a line too deep to come back from. The backlash wasn't just about morality either. It highlighted a deeper divide in pop culture. the generational split. Older fans who grew up with Hogan in the 80s saw him as a symbol of their childhood. To them, Hogan was untouchable, but younger fans, who didn't grow up during his golden years, were more likely to see him as a disgraced celebrity clinging to fame. This divide even spilled over into the wrestling world itself. Some fellow wrestlers came out in support, sending love and solidarity to Hogan. Others, they stayed quiet or even subtly shaded him, making it clear they weren't eager to jump on the Hogan redemption tour. And here's what made this backlash so fascinating. It turned the hoax into something much bigger. It wasn't just about whether Hulk Hogan was alive or dead. It became a debate about legacy, forgiveness, and whether the world should still cheer for the heroes of yesterday once their flaws are exposed. But just when the arguments were at their loudest, Hogan himself made another move, one that nobody saw coming, and it left even his critics stunned. The unexpected twist, just when everyone thought Hulk Hogan would retreat into silence. Letting the controversy play out on its own, he shocked the world with a move nobody expected. Instead of ignoring the criticism or firing back with anger, Hogan leaned in. Days after the viral "I'm alive, brother" post, Hogan released a long-form video message. But this wasn't the typical Hulkster flexing his muscles or shouting catchphrases. No, this was different. Sitting in what looked like his Florida home, dressed in a simple black bandana and t-shirt, Hogan spoke directly to his fans and to his critics. And here's where the twist comes in. Hogan didn't just celebrate being alive, he addressed the elephant in the room. He acknowledged the backlash, admitted to past mistakes, and even said the words no one thought they'd hear. "I can't change what I did, but I can try to change who I am." For fans who had been begging for some kind of accountability, this was a moment that hit hard. It wasn't the over-the-top wrestling persona talking. It was Terry Bollea, the man behind Hulk Hogan, trying to take ownership of his past, while still holding on to his legacy. But Hogan didn't stop there. The second half of the video revealed something even more unexpected. He announced a partnership with a children's cancer foundation, pledging to donate part of his upcoming business earnings to charity. Whether you believe it was genuine or just a PR move, the timing was undeniable. Hogan had taken the storm of backlash and tried to turn it into an opportunity for redemption. Fans were divided again, but this time the conversation shifted. Some praised him for finally stepping up and using his platform for something positive. Others weren't buying it, calling the gesture a band-aid over a bullet wound, suggesting that Hogan was just trying to clean up his image. But one thing was undeniable. The twist kept Hogan in the headlines. The very hoax that was supposed to bury him had instead sparked one of the most complex public conversations about his legacy in years. And whether people were cheering, booing, or rolling their eyes, everyone was watching. And here's the kicker. Hogan ended the video with a cryptic line. "The story isn't over, brother." Not by a long shot. That single sentence left fans buzzing with speculation. Was he hinting at a full comeback? A new show? Another run in the wrestling world? No one knew for sure. But one thing was certain. Hogan had flipped the script on his own controversy, leaving both fans and critics waiting for the next chapter. The legacy question. As the dust settled around the hoax, the backlash, and the unexpected twist, one question kept circling online. What will Hulk Hogan's legacy really be? For decades, Hogan was the face of professional wrestling. The red and yellow gear, the "what you gonna do, brother" catchphrases, the larger-than-life persona. All of it defined an era. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was a cultural icon. Kids in the 80s and 90s wore his merch, mimicked his poses, and treated him like a superhero. But over time, the shine faded. The leaked scandals, the lawsuits, and the controversies painted a much more complicated picture. To some, he became a symbol of hypocrisy, a man who preached about honor and values in the ring but stumbled badly outside of it. To others, those flaws just made him human, a reminder that even icons are imperfect. And now, with this strange turn of events, a death hoax that spiraled into one of the loudest debates about him in years, Hogan finds himself in an unusual position. He's alive, yes, but his legacy, that's something still up for grabs. The truth is, legacy is never set in stone. Some people remember Hogan as the hero who body-slammed giants and put wrestling on the map. Others see him as the man who lost his way, who burned bridges and credibility. And then there are those who look at this latest twist, his attempt to give back, to acknowledge mistakes, to say "I'm still here," and wonder if maybe, just maybe, the story isn't finished yet. Because at the end of the day, Hogan's career has always been about comeback. In the ring, he was the master of taking a beating, looking like he was down for the count, and then, out of nowhere, hulking up and roaring back to victory. maybe this chapter of his real life isn't so different. But that leaves us with the ultimate question. When the final bell rings, how will Hulk Hogan be remembered? Will he be seen as the legend who built wrestling into a global spectacle, the flawed man whose mistakes overshadowed his glory, or the survivor who refused to let even his darkest chapters define him? The answer isn't clear yet, and maybe it never will be, because legacy isn't just about what someone did, it's about how people choose to remember it. And right now, the world is still deciding who Hulk Hogan really is. So maybe Hogan was right after all when he said, "The story isn't over." So after everything we've seen, the death hoax that sparked chaos, the raw response from Hogan himself, the backlash, the unexpected twist, and the lingering questions about his legacy, one thing is crystal clear. Hulk Hogan is still one of the most polarizing figures in entertainment history. Love him or hate him, you can't deny the impact. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was an era. He made people believe in heroes, larger-than-life stories, and the power of the comeback. And now, even decades later, he's still at the center of debates, headlines, and conversations that refuse to die down. But maybe that's the mark of a true icon, not perfection, not a spotless image, but the ability to stay relevant, to stay talked about, to remain unforgettable no matter how messy the journey gets. The question we all have to ask is, what does that say about us? Why are we still so fascinated with Hogan after all this time? Is it nostalgia? Is it the drama? Or is it because deep down, we all see a little bit of ourselves in his story? The highs, the mistakes, the regrets, and the constant fight for redemption. And here's the real kicker. Hogan's story isn't over. The legacy is still being written. In many ways, fans like you are the ones holding the pen. So I want to hear from you. When you think about Hulk Hogan, what comes to mind first? The legend, the scandals, or the survivor? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how you see him today. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into Hogan's roller coaster story, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next video. We've got more untold stories, shocking rumors, and behind-the-scenes drama coming your way. At the end of the day, Hogan once asked fans, "What you gonna do, brother?" And maybe the answer now is simple. Keep watching, keep debating, and keep the legacy alive.